Hey cruise fans, and welcome to another Cruise Travel Talk, the channel that brings you the latest and breaking news from around the cruise industry. Today's video, we're going to be sharing the breaking news that the CDC has extended its no sail order. Stay tuned. So welcome back everybody. So if this is your first time here, then welcome to our channel. This channel brings you the latest and breaking news from around the cruise industry. So if you like our content, please consider subscribing. If you're back here again, then welcome back, and it's great to see you. And today, in today's video, we're going to have some news coming out of the US overnight, and that is that the CDC have extended the cruise line's no sail ban. Now, of course, we anticipated some form of announcement from the CDC. As you know, as of yesterday, Wednesday, the no sail ban order that they put in place 3 months ago was due to expire. But overnight, there has been an update on their website, and the CDC has now extended their no sail ban until the end of October, so October 31st, and that's in line with the CLIA, the Cruise Lines International Association, self-imposed ban of cruising of their members around the world. So what does this mean for cruisers around the world, and what does it mean for the cruise industry? Well, as you've heard, the CDC have extended to the 31st of October. It's actually only a 31-day extension, so it's interesting to note the reasons why they have only extended it by 1 month. And so earlier this week, over the last few days, there have been some reports coming out of certain news agencies whom have identified that there's been a bit of a tussle between the CDC and the US government. A meeting on Monday or Tuesday of this week identified through these rumours coming out via this website that there was some head-to-head discussion with the head of the CDC, Robert Redfield, and Mike Pence, the US Vice President, where they were discussing what to do with the no sail ban and whether to extend it or not. And the details of that discussion obviously are only based on what's been reported via other websites, but in essence it's understood that Robert Redfield, the director for the CDC, was pushing for a ban of cruise sailings until the end of February 2021. And it's also understood then within the committee, in particular Mike Pence, that that was not something that they wanted to entertain in government. And therefore discussion went on within that committee meeting, of which some was reported to us over the last couple of days. So the alternative view put forward by government was that Mike Pence was not in agreement with Robert Redfield relative to pushing the no sail ban out until the end of February 2021, and that actually he only wanted to extend it in line with the CLIA self-imposed extension until the 31st of October 2020. So the rumours were right over the last few days. That has been reported fairly regularly, and it seems that those rumours were right, and that actually government has intervened and has overshadowed the wishes of the CDC, and that's reflected in the CDC announcement on its website last evening, whereby they advised that they were extending their no sail ban until the 31st of October. Okay, so this gives us some certainty, at least for the next month, in terms of what's going to happen with the cruise industry. Clearly you can't sail into or out of the US ports right now. The CDC no sail ban covers that until the end of October. Okay, so what is the reason we believe for this extension, relatively small extension of a month, when ultimately it was awaited and it was hoped that the no sail ban would just expire and that there was the opportunity for the cruise lines to go back to the business of providing cruises around the world. And as you know, there's been a whole host of different activities going on within the cruise industry. Lots of the senior people across the big three cruise lines have been actively participating in discussions. Royal Caribbean International and Norwegian Cruise Lines had their safe sailing panel. They produced a report which they sent into the CDC with over 74 recommendations in terms of how they felt that they could get back to sailing safely, in line with what's been happening over here in Europe with MSC and Costa and others. And so, despite those protestations by the cruise lines and the real urgency there is in terms of getting cruising back to some form of normality, obviously the CDC has now gone forward and extended the ban until the 31st of October. Okay, so that wasn't anticipated. I think people were hoping that it would just lapse and ultimately the cruise lines would spend the month getting ready to go back cruising. It's understood around Florida and most states in the US that actually things are pretty open up now, and individuals are freer to go about their normal daily business. So I think there was a level of anticipation that there was going to be the end to the no sail ban, and ultimately that we were going to be able to return to cruising. So the CDC announcement has proven that that's not the case. But let's delve into this a little bit more, shall we, and see what we really think is the reasons for the CDC to only extend the ban for one further month. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is, why only a month? Why wasn't the ban put in place as per the CDC director's wishes to the end of February 2021? Well, clearly it's obviously clear that the government has intervened. We know Florida is a pretty open state at this moment in time, and there's a massive industry all reliant on cruise ships doing what they do best, and that's sailing the seas. So there are lots of people dependent on the cruise industry getting back up and running. Hundreds of thousands of jobs and billions of US dollars all dependent on the cruise lines and the cruise ships cruising. So where does this leave us in terms of what we think is going on vis-a-vis the CDC and this intervention by government? The first possibility ultimately is that the CDC have recognised that the cruise lines have self-imposed a ban through CLIA until the 31st of October. So it could just be that the CDC wanted to just align to that, so all of the timings were similar or the same, and that ultimately they could continue to review what's going on relative to the feedback, the public consultation, and ultimately for them to make a real decision in terms of whether they think it's safe for cruising to get back to normal. The second possibility is ultimately that the CDC do not think that it's safe to go back to cruising right now. They obviously have been working with medical experts around the world and may well have come to the conclusion that it's not quite safe to go cruising right now. We know that there are still issues with COVID in the United States and in other countries around in the Caribbean and elsewhere around the world. So perhaps they were making a decision to say it's not quite right. Perhaps we're about 4 to 6 weeks behind Europe. Europe is starting to come out of its coronavirus problem, but the timing's not right from a lifting the sail ban perspective in the US. So that was the second possibility, and the third possibility, perhaps that's not really being looked at in much detail, is perhaps that there is some political element to this particular decision. We know that Florida is a huge state for the cruise industry. Lots of cruise ships predominantly go out of Florida. You have 3 or 4 different cruise ports, and ultimately there is a lot of pressure from the cruise lines to get running again because they're burning through billions of dollars every month cumulatively in cash. The third possibility ultimately is that with the US presidential elections coming up on November 3rd, it may be that the White House does not want any bad news in the state of Florida. We know Florida is a pretty much hung state at the moment, with a roughly 50-50 split of the vote for either party. So ultimately it could be that the White House is leveraging a bit of its control and saying, no, you're not gonna ban cruising until the end of February. That's bad news for the industry, that's bad news for Florida and its economy, and we do not want to be in a situation where ultimately we lose the state of Florida because of all of this bad news coming out for the cruise industry. So what can be happening then? Well, ultimately, if the CDC have now said, okay, we'll align with the CLIA's deadline of the 31st of October, then that at least gives them some time to take a look at the whole situation and see how the virus develops, but ultimately be in a position where they really will not be able to make a clear decision at the end of October. That perhaps is helpful from the presidential election point of view, in that there is no bad news coming through the industry adversely affecting Florida, and maybe, just maybe, and this is pure speculation on my part, that ultimately they're just kicking the can down the road for one more month, so that any decision by the CDC and local government does not have an adverse effect on the result of the presidential election in that state. Okay, so if that is the case, then where does that leave us from a return to cruising perspective? Clearly the cruise lines will be actively discussing their needs with local government, with senior leadership in the Florida government. Ultimately, they're going to want to try and get back to cruising as soon as they possibly can to help the economy of the state, but also to help the whole industry recover back from what has been a pretty devastating time for the cruise lines. However, if I put my cynical head on for a second, one might imagine a situation around the end of October or in early November where the CDC and the White House have said we are going to monitor it and we're going to get back into it at the end of this period. Can we foresee a situation which is not good for the cruise lines? Is this just a holding position in order not to adversely affect the outcome of the elections? And then ultimately, will Robert Redfield from the CDC get his way in November, when under a review and having further reviewed all the information available to them in terms of feedback from the public, and also having had an opportunity to assess the progress of the fight against COVID, that actually at the beginning or mid-November they make a decision ultimately to shut down the cruise industry still more. Now, we don't want that. Ultimately, there are lots of people associated with the industry, and in particular this channel, that really would like to see cruising start back up again when it's safe to do so. Is this just a holding position, and ultimately in November some real bad news come out for the industry, in that the CDC still think that it's appropriate to delay through to the end of February 2021. So we await developments with bated breath. At least we know where we are at the moment in terms of the alignment of this announcement and this no sail ban extended and aligned to the CLIA deadline, self-imposed deadline. But I think there are a number of questions that it answers in terms of where everybody is with it and what their preferences are. But the main thing that it does not answer is the fact that when are we going to be able to get into a situation where cruising can start up and get back to some form of normality? And that question, my friends, is not answered right now, and I don't believe it will be answered for the next month or so. So we hope you like this video. We hope you like this breaking news coming out of the States, and I hope it's useful for you wherever you are around the world. And if this is the sort of content that you like to see, if you like seeing the latest and breaking news, then please like and subscribe to our channel. This is a brand new channel. It's Cruise Travel Talk, and and we would very much appreciate you subscribing to our channel, because it's through your subscription that this channel can grow. So thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in the next news item. Bye bye.